Well, unfortunately, once again, we have another point shaving scandal in the world of college basketball. This time it is 20 players now involved, multiple schools. Once again, is off the heels of what we saw just a few months ago in the professional basketball world. We've seen this trickle in the college basketball world, and once again, we are here again as the government cracking down on yet another scandal. Welcome to Southeast Sports Plus. I'm Gerhard Mathangani, joined by Patrick Walsh. Patrick, we like to start these shows on a more lighter note. However, you have to start where the big news is, especially when it involves so many schools, such a widespread thing, and the fact that the government once again is involved, unfortunately, here in college basketball.
Yeah, and I feel like it's at least once a month now that we're starting to talk about this whole scenario with college athletes either being bribed to throw games, to point shave in this scenario, or they just get caught betting on some other games while they're still playing. And this is just another scenario of that. There are the NCAA and other governing bodies have found that more than 27 schools were involved in this point shaving scheme. It's just like it's crazy because it feels like yesterday that we talked about the whole mafia backed poker scheme,
right?
And then it was goodness, who was it over there in Portland? Chauncey Billups.
Chauncey Billups and Damon Jones were all caught up in that and that got higher because that was involving the mafia, which it was involved in that as well. And I initially thought, when I first read this headline, I'll be honest, I initially thought that this had to do a lot with that and with the mafia and whatnot. Yeah. It wasn't. It was actually a point shaving scandal that actually started in the Chinese Basketball Association and then made its way over, unfortunately, to Division I. 4 current athletes are implied in this. It seems that the games that were fixed were not games this year. This probe goes all the way back, I think, to 2022. And so,
that's correct, yes.
So there was this is a long stretch where the government has made a very, very compelling case against these players and against these coaches. And what I think it speaks to is just how it's unfortunate where it seems that as soon as gambling became legal, sports gambling became legal in the United States, there was going to be some overcorrections. And that's always the case anytime you go from something being regulated or is done in the shadows to now done in the light. I just think that I always hope every time we get one of these stories, it's the last time. I would just think that, okay, it's enough of a deterrent to not have it anymore, to have this much public shame, to possibly serve jail time. I'm like, okay, this is the last blow. And unfortunately, here we are again.
And I don't think that this is going to be the last. I just feel like I made the snowball analogy with the whole TJ Finley situation yesterday. And I feel like this is starting to become into a snowball, and the avalanche warning is already in effect. Some of these other schemes outside of the NBA, probably more talking NCAA, or with these mid to low level Division I schools. This is the first scenario where we've really seen a P5 school, albeit DePaul, they're still in the Big East, be involved in this. And let's just let the numbers speak for themselves. So these were some of the bets that were allegedly placed on games. And honestly, here's what I have to say, and I'm sure you probably agree with me. Why in the world would you place a $458,000 bet on Towson to beat UNC A&T and have that not get flagged?
I hate to be the rearview mirror person, but the thing is that when you see that bet come through, you have to think, yes, it's an alarming thing, because nobody would put close to $500,000 on those two schools. And it's no disrespect to those two schools, but even if you had the money, and even if you thought it was a guarantee or felt good about the bet or whatever the case is, that right there should have let you know.
Yeah. And then we've got $424,000 on Kent State to cover the first half spread against Buffalo, $275,000 on South Alabama to cover the first half spread against Southern Miss, $256,000 on Northern Kentucky to cover the first half spread against Robert Morris. Robert Morris and Southern Miss are on here 3 times, I believe. And then $161,000 on Louisiana Lafayette to cover the first half spread. And here is where the Chinese Basketball Association comes in. $168,300 on the Guangdong Southern Tigers to win their game. And now I don't know if it came out which game that it was betted on.
Right.
I'm not sure if that actually came out. And then someone attempted to go into a casino and place a $50,000 bet on Southern Miss money line against Alabama State. and then keeping it rolling, $30,000 on St. Bonaventure to cover the first half line against LaSalle. Now, keep in mind, the proponents in this situation are the latter teams. It's not the first team.
Correct.
So this is point shaving. So the second team that you hear on each of these is the ones that are under investigation. And it's just it's unfortunate because you and I both I wouldn't say I avidly sports bet anymore. I place a bet here and there.
Sure, yeah.
And I feel like all this is doing is, you know how sometimes it takes one bad apple to ruin it for the rest of us. And it feels like that's what's going on here.
Yep, and it does. And I think that you get the sense, too, that when you look at the schools that are involved, and I'm going to paint with some broad brushes here. When you look at the schools that are involved, it's not like you said that we have like basically one P4 major school.
Right.
I think because most of the schools that are on here, most of these players are not getting a lot of NIL money.
No.
What's the way to guarantee that you can make money and still play your sport, at least temporarily, is to maneuver the gambling lines and or manipulate the gambling lines, especially if you're going to get a cut. And so it's unfortunate. Right. And I think a lot of these players end up making decisions that it scars them forever. I mean, the moment you get caught, you are no longer playing. That's it. You're done.
Yeah, and the unfortunate part is I almost feel like some of these players were probably forced against their will to comply because out of fear of retaliation if you say, oh, no, I don't want to do this. Because then you just start to think about how am I going to be affected by this if I say no? Are they going to come hunt me down, so to speak? So that's just the scary part. And these people that prey on these athletes know that too. They basically force them into this situation. That's why I don't think you will ever see the Dukes, the Alabamas, the Auburns to ever, deal with this situation because they have their NIL money, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
It's these mid-major schools that don't really have the funds to go around for each of these players that get picked on.
Yep. Glass half full.
Yes.
I'm just do a glass half full, big picture. I'm going to just be positive for a second. The good thing about this is the fact that now that gambling has been regulated, we now have a situation where these stories are now being uncovered.
Right. Yes. That's
under the old team. This would still, because everything was living in the shadows, this would live in the shadows as well. Yep. So we are cracking down on these bad apples, so to speak, and we're getting to these things a lot faster. That is the one good thing. And people who want to lament about sports gambling, the legalization of it, this is the good side of it.
It is.
And hopefully, once again, I'll say this, hopefully this serves as a deterrent for anybody else looking to do this and or jeopardize their future and or their teammates' future. We got a chance to hear from the United States Attorney, David Metcalf from the Eastern District of Pennsylvania. He broke this thing down in a layman's way to find out how they uncovered what they uncovered and the justice that came down today.
The scheme here was the defendants would identify a game in which a corrupted player had a team that was favored to lose, and then they would bribe said player to deliberately underperform so that his team would lose by more than they were favored to. They would bet for them to not cover the point spread. They started this scheme, again, with the Chinese Basketball Association where Mr. Blakeney was playing. And Mr. Fairley, Mr. Hennon, Mr. Blakeney eventually made a lot of money. Mr. Blakeney was a standout star in the Chinese Basketball Association. He was averaging 32 points a game at the moment that this conspiracy started. In the first game, he scored 11 points. And they didn't cover the spread. And Mr. Fairley and Mr. Hennon, who were professional sports bettors, would then wager substantial amounts of money based on this fixed game. And how the scheme worked is Mr. Fairley, Mr. Hennon, and these other leaders would bribe NCAA basketball players to the tune of $10,000 to $30,000 per game. The player would then agree to deliberately underperform in the game in which his team was favored to lose by a certain amount of points. They would then try to lose the game by more than that amount. So, for example, if a team was favored to lose by 4 points, the player would receive a bribe to underperform so that his team would lose more than that. They did so with carefully orchestrated FaceTime calls to obscure and prevent their communications from being intercepted and recorded. They recruited other players. They had players recruit their teammates. And this scheme and this conspiracy eventually mushroomed. It eventually enveloped 17 NCAA Division I programs, 39 players, and 29 games that we allege were either fixed or attempted to be fixed. I'm not going to go through every team, school, and game, but I think you all get the point. This was a massive scheme. It enveloped the world of college basketball. It included conferences such as the Big East, the Atlantic 10 Conference, the Sun Belt, the Horizon League. It involved games against nationally ranked programs. It involved games in the playoffs of conference championships. It was a significant corruption of the integrity of sports. Once a player received a bribe, Mr. Faley and Mr. Hennon would then place substantial amounts of money to the tune of hundreds of thousands of dollars per game to enrich themselves, to the tune of an aggregate loss of millions of dollars in fraudulent sports bets on bribed and fixed games.
It's a 70-page document, lots to dive into. I'll name the schools that are in this indictment: Abilene Christian, Alabama State, Buffalo, Coppin State, DePaul, Eastern Michigan, Fordham, Kennesaw State, LaSalle, New Orleans, Nicholls State, North Carolina A&T, Northwestern State, Robert Morris, St. Louis, Southern Miss, and Tulane. The NCAA and the United States government all working to corral this, and hopefully this will be one of the last times that we talk about these situations. If history says anything otherwise, then we probably won't. But it's good that this story has now been put to bed and justice now will be served as they move forward.